In Chapter 4 of Food Safety for Food Service Employees, we're going to look at bare hand contact. According to the FDA, over 80% of foodborne illnesses are caused by bare hand contact with ready-to-eat foods. Bare hands must not touch ready-to-eat foods. In the 1st District Health Unit, bare hand contact with ready-to-eat food is prohibited. A ready-to-eat food is a food that's in a form that is edible without additional preparation that would cause a reduction in pathogens. Some examples include sliced apples or celery or carrots, baked bread or buns or muffins, toast, pickles, cheese slices, lettuce, tomatoes, deli meats, buns, things that would go on a sandwich, ice, and pizza slices. The hands of food employees play two different roles in the transmission of pathogens. They can serve as the source of contamination by resident bacteria, like Staphylococcus. If you have a cut on your hand with pus coming out of it, your hand is the source of the contamination. Your hands can also serve as a vehicle for transient microorganisms, like hepatitis A virus or Shigella bacteria, by transporting them from their source to the food. In 2008, at the University of Colorado, 51 college students were taken at random off the grounds, and their hands were tested for the presence of bacteria. The researchers found 4,742 different species of bacteria on the hands of these 51 students. There were 5 species that were present on every hand tested. The rest were random. That means that there were around 92 species per person in the study. Some researchers looked at E. coli levels on food employees after they used the restroom and washed their hands. They found E. coli in 25% of the individuals that they sampled and found that hand washing decreased the amount of E. coli but did not eliminate it altogether. They concluded that infected individuals shed the bacteria at high levels, have high hand contamination levels, even if they practice good hand hygiene. It has been shown to be possible for people to contaminate their hands by touching contaminated surfaces, and by touching other contaminated hands. A study was done in 2000 looking at the hand transmission of viruses. A door handle was contaminated with viruses, and 14 out of 14 people who touched that door handle had their hands contaminated. When these people with contaminated hands shook hands with 14 more people, 13 out of those 14 were found to have contamination present on their hands. These 13 people with contaminated hands then shook hands with an additional 14 people, and it was found that they were able to contaminate the hands of 6 more people. A study done in 2004 looked at the transfer of norovirus from contaminated fecal material. The volunteers in the study's fingertips were contaminated by pressing the fingers onto contaminated toilet tissue for 10 seconds and then drying the fingers for 15 seconds. They found that the norovirus could sequentially transfer from those people's hands to at least 7 different environmental surfaces. It was found that secondary transfer of norovirus from contaminated surfaces to clean fingers and then from the fingers to other surfaces can occur to 4 different surfaces. Norovirus is able to survive at 140 degrees Fahrenheit for up to 30 minutes. And it will survive on produce, like lettuce, longer than the shelf life of the produce itself under refrigerated conditions. The ease of transfer of norovirus from hands to surfaces and its durability on those surfaces means that it is particularly important not to get noroviruses onto these places in the first place. In order to prevent bare hand contact with ready-to-eat foods and possible contamination of those ready-to-eat foods, food may be handled with equipment, such as spoons, tongs, or spatulas, or it may be handled with items like deli tissue or napkins. Some foods that require extensive manipulation to work with may require the food handler to wear single-use gloves. When using gloves to prevent bare hand contact, it is the responsibility of management to ensure that the proper sizes of gloves are kept on hand and available. People with large hands will not be able to fit them in small gloves, and people with small hands will not be able to work properly when wearing gloves that are too large. It is the responsibility of management to ensure that gloves are being used correctly. Latex gloves are prohibited from food contact in food service establishments. In order to use gloves properly, you should wash your hands before putting them on and when changing to a fresh pair. You should make sure the gloves fit properly. You should change them when necessary. If they become soiled or torn, you should change them. When you begin a different task, you should change gloves. If you work with food continuously for 4 hours or more, you should change them at least once every 4 hours. And after you handle raw meat, fish, or poultry, you should change them before handling cooked or ready-to-eat foods. When removing them, grasp them at the cuff and peel them off inside out over your fingers. Avoid touching your palm or fingers with the gloves. Never wash and reuse single-use gloves. They are single-use and should be worn one time and then discarded. When wearing gloves, you should not handle non-food items like the phone. You should not open packages or containers of food. You should not handle dirty tableware, utensils, or equipment. You should not handle money. You should not touch your face, hair, or clothing. You should not handle garbage or trash. Remember, if it would make your hands dirty, it will make your gloves dirty also. This is the end of Chapter 4.